I know it's been nothing but Activision Blizzard coverage this past week, but I mean, these allegations are far too serious. The industry at large needs to change for the better, and Activision Blizzard cannot be let off the hook, especially given the latest reports surrounding what's known as the Cosby suite, which I'm sure many of you have heard about by now. I'd like to report on that, but before we begin, just as a quick recap, Jalen Brack and Fran Townsend both sent internal emails to employees that pissed them off. Jalen Brack was just sending empty platitudes, and Fran Townsend outright just denied any of the allegations, saying that it's all distorted facts and whatnot, despite Blizzard employees corroborating all of the allegations issued by the state of California in their massive lawsuit against Activision Blizzard. And in the public PR statement that Activision Blizzard released, they essentially had the same stance of the facts being distorted and false, and calling the DFEH irresponsible when that lawsuit brought up a lot of the crap to the surface. And beyond that, we've got Activision Blizzard employees who have been protesting en masse, with over 3,200 current and past Activision Blizzard employees signing an open letter that calls out just how aberrant and insulting the internal email sent to staff was on the part of Activision Blizzard executives, and they iterated that they will not be silenced, not stand aside, and they will not give up. And that's certainly what happened, as Activision Blizzard employees staged a walkout, striking by refusing to work on July 28th, yesterday on Wednesday. And for those who couldn't make it to the physical protest outside of Blizzard campus, they were asked to not work all day and to attend a virtual protest instead, all the while issuing a statement of intent listing out various demands on the part of employees to higher-ups and executives. And many Blizzard employees did in fact attend, and you can see the kind of turnout just the physical version of the protest had in this picture, showing employees situated outside of the campus holding up signs and showing solidarity for the cause that aims to better the culture that has permeated Activision Blizzard, one that has enabled harassment, abuse, and discrimination. It was only after the massive lawsuit was levied against Activision Blizzard, only after all of the allegations came to light, only after the mass backlash from the community and the mass protests from employees, that CEO Bobby Kotick finally issued a statement that talks about how he appreciates their courage and essentially tries to sing Kumbaya in this situation, when what he should be doing is showing shame for the role that he played, for the enabling that he partook in alongside the rest of Activision Blizzard's leadership and executive team. This statement rings hollow coming from a CEO who has engaged in despicable business practices, who has underpaid and neglected his employees while he himself got payouts of up to $155 million and whatnot. He has absolutely no right to say every voice matters when under his leadership, every voice has not, in fact, mattered. And the world at large was horrified to learn just how much was enabled by Activision and Blizzard leadership, the kind of behavior that people in power engaged in, namely Alex Afrasiabi, who is among the few who is actually singled out and named in the lawsuit issued by the DFEH. And there's one specific quote from page 15 that I'd like to read to you guys that pertains to today's story. Here's what this paragraph 47 says. Alex Afrasiabi, the former senior creative director of World of Warcraft at Blizzard Entertainment, was permitted to engage in blatant sexual harassment with little to no repercussions. During a company event, an annual convention called BlizzCon, Afrasiabi would hit on female employees, telling him that he wanted to marry them, attempting to kiss them, and putting his arms around them. This was in plain view of other male employees, including supervisors, who had to intervene and pull him off female employees. Now, this is the important part. Afrasiabi was so known to engage in harassment of females that his suite was nicknamed the Cosby suite. It says Crosby suite, but what they mean is Cosby suite, after alleged RAPE-ist, and I'm saying it like that because YouTube likes to bury videos that use words that they deem inappropriate. Alleged RAPE-ist Bill Crosby Afrasiabi would also call females derogatory names at company events. Afrasiabi's conduct was known to Blizzard Entertainment's executives who took no effective remedial measures. J. Allen Brack, the current president of Blizzard Entertainment, allegedly had multiple conversations with Afrasiabi about his drinking and that he had been too friendly towards female employees at company events. Understatement of the year. J. Allen Brack, all he did was give him a stern talking to, but didn't actually punish him in any severe way, and essentially, in doing so, enable this, was complacent to this, but gave Afrasiabi a slap on the wrist, i.e. verbal counseling, in response to these incidents. Subsequently, Afrasiabi continued to make unwanted advances towards female employees, including grabbing a female employee's hand and inviting her to his hotel room and groping another woman. It's not as if what Afrasiabi was doing was subtle. It's not as if it wasn't an open secret. It's not as if J. Allen Brack didn't know about this, and it wasn't as if this was just a one-time offense, but as someone in a position of power, the senior creative director of the biggest MMO in the world, World of Warcraft, he was just deemed too important for him to suffer any consequences, to be held accountable, while the ground floor employees who were victimized and suffering were deemed less important and were just simply ignored and cast aside, and didn't see any reparations. With all that out of the way, let's finally take a look at this Kotaku investigative report from Ethan Gatch titled Inside Blizzard Developers' Infamous Bill Cosby Suite. Immediately striking about this article is the headline photo showing a bunch of both former and current Blizzard employees posing, smiling on a bed next to an image of none other than Bill Cosby, who many of you will know is a convicted RAPE-ist. Now, this image was taken during BlizzCon 2013 when Cosby hadn't been convicted yet, but by then plenty of accusations and allegations had been levied against Cosby, and there was an extensive public history of that, and you can see that in this Vulture article from back in December 30th, 2015, that outlines a timeline of allegations levied against him before he was finally convicted years and years down the line. So it's not as if these scumbags didn't know exactly what they were doing, exactly what they were implying, especially given that the purpose of this suite was to bring in hot chicks and try to inappropriately seduce them. And what was known as the Cosby Suite, that was Alex Afrasiabi's suite. Now, while he may have organized this abominable activity, make no mistake, there were plenty of people who enabled this and who participated in this, and the internet has already determined exactly who is seen in this photo. Enlarging this image, you can see exactly who each of these individuals are. Starting with this guy on the left here, Greg Street, who is now VP at Riot Games. This man right here is Corey Stockton, who is still at Blizzard, and according to the second image, he is a game director at Blizzard. Next to Corey, we have David Kosak, who is a creative director at Deviation Games. Moving along to the right, we have Josh Mosquera, who is at Bonfire Studios, specifically design and world building. Below Josh Mosquera, we have Jesse McCree, who is still working at Blizzard and is a lead designer at the company. Next to him, we have Jonathan LeCraft, who is also still a current Blizzard employee and is the design sub-lead at Blizzard. To the left of Jonathan is Paul Cazares, who is currently at ZeniMax Online Studios and holds the position of principal level designer. And last but not least, we have Alex Afrasiabi, an abuser so bad that the lawsuit felt it was necessary to single him out and name him. While I don't know what he's doing now, we do know that Alex Afrasiabi quietly left Blizzard last year, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But yeah, suffice to say, as the Kotaku article points out, that it's clear that people beyond Alex Afrasiabi were aware of the Cosby Suite mentioned in the lawsuit and directly participated in it. And beyond the inappropriate implications of naming a hotel room the Cosby Suite, Kotaku knows that this extended beyond an inappropriate nickname or a joke. The activities that took place in that suite were also equally inappropriate. Based on images and comments Afrasiabi posted on his Facebook supplied to Kotaku by a former developer at Blizzard, it was reportedly a booze-filled meeting place where many, including Afrasiabi, would pose with an actual portrait of Cosby while smiling. It was also a hotspot for informal networking at BlizzCon, where people looking to make inroads at the company would go to meet and hang out with some of its top designers. And zooming into the screenshots applied by Kotaku, you can see a post by Alex Afrasiabi from back in November of 2013 showing a photo of a suite with a bunch of alcohol. And Alex has no shame here calling this the Cosby suite, saying day zero preparations made, Cosby suite in effect. And you can see from the responses, just folks who are excited about this event. Now, as all of this begins to unfold, Afrasiabi has not only refused to comment to media outlets who have reached out to him about this whole situation, but he has also deleted most of his social media presence. He's going into hiding. But as seen in the headline photo, Afrasiabi can be seen and clearly identified in not just that one picture, but in a number of pictures, according to Kotaku. And here's something really messed up. Among those identified in pictures taken within the Cosby suite was an HR representative who was spotted in the hotel room present and partaking in all of this. The people who are supposed to be defending employees from this kind of stuff partook in the Cosby suite. There were HR representatives who were partaking in the activities that they're supposed to be policing. It's no wonder that so many employees don't feel safe going to HR to report a problem, because they're among the enablers and among the abusers, and they will simply defend their abusing friends and ignore the reports of victims. So shameless was Alex Afrasiabi and participants about the Cosby suite that he just straight up posted all of this stuff on Facebook with no shame, straight up calling it the Cosby suite in comments and proudly presenting this to the internet. This is how confident the man was that he would suffer no consequences. This is how much abusers like Afrasiabi have been protected. This is how much they've been enabled. This is how much they could get away with. And this is just what we know of publicly. Scrolling further down the article, you'll find this incriminating image of a group chat that really highlights the kind of disgusting culture that Blizzard leadership and management and HR and enablers fostered and allowed. And here's the thing, you didn't have to dig to find this, because Alex Afrasiabi proudly posted this on Facebook. And you can clearly see here that among those who engaged in this group chat are folks that I've listed out in this image right here: Corey Stockton, David Kosak, Alex Afrasiabi, you name it. They're all right here, and this is the conversation that took place in a group chat labeled BlizzCon Cosby Crew. Dave Kosak says, "I'm gathering the hot chicks for the cause," referring to the Cosby suite. "Bring him," responds Afrasiabi. Then Corey Stockton says, "Greg, you on the way?" Kosak then says, "You can't marry all of them, Alex." Alex responds, "I can. I'm Middle Eastern." Jesse McCree, "You misspelled fuck." And note the profile image that Alex chose for this group chat. Greg then responds that he's at the Hilton bar. Jesse McCree then finally says, "Come up to the Cos," once again referring to the Cosby suite. So they openly called it the Cosby suite. It wasn't some secret, it wasn't some whisper. No, it was just out there in the open, and they were proud of it. They didn't care that people knew. Now, a couple sources relate to Kotaku that the name Cosby Suite allegedly began as a joke on the comedian's iconic ugly sweaters, because apparently the rooms that they would reserve for the Cosby Suite would be just dated looking and would look as ugly as that sweater. Another source shared a slightly different story, saying that it was a reference to an ugly boardroom back at Blizzard's main office. Another said that they understood it to be a reference to an ugly hotel room during a different gaming conference. But all of that is hard to buy, given that when Kotaku reviewed pictures of the 2013 BlizzCon hotel room, the walls were largely white and blank, and the decor was nondescript. Looks nothing like the sweaters in the framed picture everyone is holding. And then another former Blizzard employee told Kotaku that claims that the Cosby Suite had to do with the sweater and the rooms that they reserved being ugly was a false narrative, noting that when Blizzard moved to its new Irvine, California campus in 2008, the office had been freshly painted and there was no infamous ugly boardroom that could be referenced. And the Cosby Suite stuff took place much later than 2008, with 2013 in particular being a prominent year for that. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, the origin of the name Cosby Suite, or the intent behind naming it the Cosby Suite, doesn't matter. What matters is what took place in that room. And it's not hard to see, based on this group chat alone, what these men were up to. what they were trying to accomplish. It doesn't change the fact that all this puts a huge spotlight on the kind of inappropriate culture that has permeated Blizzard for years and years. And this wasn't just some recreational activity outside of work, this was during freaking BlizzCon, and a bunch of employees, females in particular, have come out with their own stories about how people like Alex continue to try to hit on them inappropriately and try to bait them into his suite and whatnot. Like, the image that's painted by all this is very crystal clear. Now, interesting to note about the sources saying that they thought the Cosby suite name was a play on the Cosby ugly jacket is that they actually didn't know that the room belonged to Afrasiabi, and I wonder if had they known, if they would have interpreted the Cosby suite differently, given Afrasiabi's notorious reputation of being just a harasser and an abuser and someone who's just way too handsy and who engages very inappropriately. And not to mention that there are other sources, other former developers who told Kotaku that for them the Cosby suite name was very clearly interpreted as it being a reference to the allegations against him, of which there were plenty by 2013. Two other sources were confident in saying that Cosby's reputation was apparently the point of why the group of men gathered around his picture in the photos. They knew exactly what they were trying to imply with that. With a quote from one of the sources reading as follows: "It was such a boys' club that creating something like the Cosby suite was seen as funny." Now, interestingly, one source apparently told Kotaku that Kosak was one of the few people who intervened in the past when another Blizzard developer was sexually harassing them. But, I mean, given the kind of behavior Kosak engaged in, pretty hypocritical. Just because you defend someone against a nefarious activity doesn't mean that that individual should be forgiven in any way, shape, or form for engaging in a similarly nefarious activity. And I mean, just look at the hypocrisy of some of these perpetrators acting like they support the cause of resolving an issue that they caused. As pointed out by Lindsay Thompson here, Greg Street among those pictured to be posing with this image of Bill Cosby alongside Alex Afrasiabi. This is a photo that was proudly tweeted by Greg Street on November of 2013. This man recently came on Twitter after all of the allegations began to come out to say, "I'm not trying to speak for Blizzard, and I'm certainly not trying to speak for the women or POCs at Blizzard. I do believe men in leadership roles have a responsibility, a duty to make sure women and other marginalized folks feel welcome, happy, and successful at our studios." The audacity of this man to put out this statement after engaging in shit like this. And by tweeting this on the same day that he posted that photo of him posing with that image of Bill Cosby, there must always be a Cosby suite. Last but not least, I'd like to relay a statement provided by a spokesperson for Activision Blizzard when they were asked about this whole Cosby suite situation. They confirmed that this was indeed reported by numerous employees, stating, "An employee brought these 2013 events to our attention in June of 2020. We immediately conducted our own investigation and took corrective action." 7 years later. At the time of the report, we had already conducted a separate investigation of Alex Afrasiabi and terminated him for his misconduct and his treatment of other employees. It took 7 years to oust someone who was so openly and blatantly harassing women. Imagine how much longer it's going to take for those abusers who do it more subtly. This is a company that keeps touting a zero-tolerance policy, but they tolerated all of this for 7 years. No, more than 7 years. 2013 is just what we know of. No doubt Afrasiabi engaged similarly prior to 2013. And despite all of this, despite having enabled this, CEO Bobby Kotick has the audacity to say there is no place anywhere at our company for discrimination, harassment, or unequal treatment of any kind. As far as Afrasiabi goes, he's had a place for all of that for years and years and years. J. Allen Brack, the current president of Blizzard, despite having known about Afrasiabi's activities for years and years, has the audacity to say that it's completely unacceptable for anyone in the company to face discrimination or harassment, or to say that he disdains bro culture and has spent his entire career fighting against it, despite how open the harassment on the part of Afrasiabi was, and all that having gone unpunished. All this time, y'all clearly found Afrasiabi's behavior acceptable. His behavior clearly had a place in the company for far too long. And let's not forget that Afrasiabi was terminated quietly. His abusive behavior was never brought to light. And with this spokesperson's statement, this is an admission that Blizzard knew about Afrasiabi, knew about the whole Cosby suite situation, and yet the official PR statement that was given to media outlets was that the DFEH includes distorted and in many cases false descriptions of Blizzard's past. The DFEH lawsuit nailed the information surrounding the Cosby suite that Afrasiabi hosted, and yet Activision Blizzard's stance was that the DFEH's behavior for disclosing that information was disgraceful and unprofessional. And the fact that Afrasiabi was terminated quietly really goes to spotlight corporations' tendencies to protect abusers out of self-preservation, to protect the reputation of the company, not to protect the human beings that they're responsible for, and not to protect the human beings at other companies who might be afflicted if Afrasiabi is hired. Hell, we can see right here how many of these harassers managed to find positions of power and prominent positions within other companies, and how many of them have managed to stay within Blizzard itself. The time for executives' apologies and platitudes has long passed. They need to step down. Leadership needs to be overhauled from top to bottom. They cannot be allowed to continue. They cannot be allowed to remain in their position, as they have shown time and again over the course of years and years that they just don't care, that they're not willing to do what's right, that they don't have the qualifications to protect their employees. And if that's not one of their top priorities, if that's not priority number one, the safety of their employees, then they should not be leading a company. They should not be in positions of power at a company. They need to go. The chances of that happening are pretty slim given the kind of power that these executives hold, but I can only hope that the DFEH's lawsuit carries through, that they really suffer major consequences, that employee protests continue, and that they keep the ball rolling, continue to demand positive change, continue to strike, and continue to disrupt the company to a degree that executives will have no choice but to capitulate to demands. What gives me hope is that the scale of protests going on right now is massive. Just recently, nearly 500 Ubisoft employees signed an open letter showing solidarity for employees at Activision Blizzard, and now they're unified in the protest against not just Activision Blizzard or Ubisoft or Riot and all of these companies where reports of abuse, harassment, and discrimination have come out, but protesting a culture that's permeating the industry at large. There are plenty of other stories, no doubt, that we have yet to hear, plenty of other horrifying ones from a number of other reputable companies. There needs to be accountability, not just against the abusers, but the higher-ups, the leaders who have failed to protect employees, who have neglected employees, who have enabled the victimizers, who have let all of this happen and who didn't care about all of this happening right under their noses and knowing full well that this was all happening. So that's one man's take on the Cosby suite story. It goes without saying, I am freaking sick and disgusted to hear of what transpires behind the scenes, and that participants in this kind of activity are still allowed to hold positions of power within game companies. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on everything, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.